Let's talk about the movies, right? We're at the midway point of the summer box office season in China, and the latest data does show that ticket revenue surpassing 6 billion renminbi, with crime and comedy the biggest draws so far. Now, that number, though, that is still lagging last year when cinemas took in just over 20 billion renminbi across the summer period from June to the end of August. And according to data from tracking platform Manwaring, this year's box office takings could be the slowest since 2014, excluding the COVID-affected years of 2020 through to 2022. Now, one of the movies leading the box office, though, and really driving this charge, is this Hong Kong action feature. Have you seen it yet? Twilight of the Warriors, Walled In. Manwaring estimates it took in $107 million in both the mainland and Hong Kong. And it's been one of Hong Kong's most watched local films, attracting almost 1.6 million viewers since it debuted on May 1st. Joining us now, I'm pleased to bring in IMAX China CEO Daniel Manwaring. Also with us is Media Asia Group CEO CT Yip. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. I got to start with you, Daniel, because you just became the IMAX China CEO pretty recently. But, obviously we've been talking about the summer season maybe losing a bit of steam. But we saw a roaring start at the beginning of the year as well. Are we likely to see more of a rebound?
Yeah, I think the summer's taken a little bit more time to really kick off. I think the biggest movies of the summer have yet to really come out. Starting later this month on the 26th, there's 2 big films coming out, and then in August we've got another third one. By the way, 2 of those are actually shot with IMAX cameras, which is something that we're going to be expanding a lot. Between now and the end of next year, we actually have 7 IMAX titles. These are Chinese films that are shot with IMAX cameras. It's the most we've ever had in the company's history. So I think it did get a little bit of a slow start to the summer, but the next few weeks we're going to start to see that pick up.
CT, I mean, you've been collaborating with China producers and the like and making these films as well. I mean, what do you think is going to be driving that market rebound then in China?
Well, firstly, we're involved in the second one, the one that's going to be showing on the 3rd of August. So we're very excited with that. So I think what's driving is, firstly, you got to have new stories, a new way of telling stories, and a lot of these directors from mainland China are doing that very, very well.
You mentioned that the growth of the consumer market is still intact. There's a sense that consumers are a little bit more frugal these days. How does that impact, do you think, box office sales, and how are their tastes changing when it comes to movies now?
Sure. I think on a long-term basis, I think the economy of China is still going to grow, because the theme of urbanization is still here. I mean, for a country of 1.4 billion people. So in the long run, economic growth is a no-brainer. And if you look at what you mentioned, frugality, in terms of ticket prices, this is really relatively lower consumption in terms of the overall consumer segments, right? So as a result, we're still very, very bullish on that.
Daniel, it's Haidi in Sydney here, and I'm wondering if you feel the same way, because obviously all the headlines are about the economic weakness and the weakness in household spending and discretionary spending. Are you seeing that being reflected in demand, and does that kind of give you less confident about expanding to more screens across the country?
I think it affects at different levels. So for IMAX, which is a very premium brand in the country, we're actually pretty confident about the market right now. And when we see younger people being more particular about how they spend their money, they're spending it on premium experiences. And so, that's been driving our business for so long. It's an area that we're going to be expanding, not just in our network. We recently signed a very large deal, the biggest deal actually in the last 5 years for the company, with Wanda, which covers over 123 sites over the next 4 years. However, what we're going to be seeing a lot more of is different experiences. I think the key here is really providing that premium experience, whether it's watching a film, whether it's seeing a concert in IMAX, or seeing a video game championship. We're going to be opening the aperture of our content offerings. And as long as that remains in a really premium way, I think that consumer will continue to show up.
And the government reopening to Hollywood titles has been pretty gradual. I do wonder if, as you look ahead, obviously, to the November US election, is there optimism perhaps that, whichever new cabinet or sort of consistent cabinet we end up getting, is there the opportunity to bring more US titles to the Chinese market?
So I think what's really interesting is for the last 18 months, I mean, we've seen really positive support from the Chinese Film Bureau. I mean, most Hollywood titles this year are getting day and date releases, which is very different than several years ago. So, I'm not someone to take bets on politics, but I don't see that policy changing very much. I do think we will continue to see favorable release dates for foreign films, Hollywood titles in China, and particularly next 2025, where we have a very robust slate. Avatar 3 is coming out next year. I think it's important to note, too, the strike from last year had a very large impact on this year and a lot of the releases that got pushed. But we don't see a huge barrier to that releasing from a policy standpoint.
And CT, I mean, it seems like a lot of the biggest blockbusters we've seen from China has been local titles.
Yes.
There seems to be this trend that Chinese moviegoers are less interested in foreign films, especially when it comes to U.S. movies. Do you think this is a lasting trend? And will Hollywood kind of take a smaller role now?
So again, we're very optimistic in terms of the twin engines of growth, right? So you mentioned that the domestically produced films are getting more popular. I mean, for 2023 alone, over 80% of the market share has been domestically produced movies. But having said that, if you look at the movies that were successful last year or even this year, the big movies are getting bigger, and the quality are really high. Right, so what I'm saying is that it's popular for a reason, because it's high quality and people are attracted to high quality movies. And at the same time, the industry welcomes more Hollywood films being brought back into China again.
Yeah.
So we really see these two engines of growth, and hopefully the Hollywood movies are of high quality as well.
The Hong Kong film industry, I mean, I think has really helped the Chinese film industry grow the past few decades or so. Now you see China throwing a lot more capital into their own movies. They have their own expertise, their own movie stars here right now. Could Hong Kong actually get squeezed eventually from some of these the homegrown market?
Right. So I think, again, the movie industry is a very competitive one, right? So for Hollywood movies, you have to compete with these domestically produced movies. And same for Hong Kong. I mean, if Hollywood is under pressure, Hong Kong is under pressure too. So the way that we would protect our own market standings is to really make high-quality, better movies that are acceptable to the audience in China.
Daniel, I'll get to you. There's obviously a lot of upcoming releases coming, and I think Deadpool and Wolverine is the big one for this summer. Disney making a comeback in China. How big is that going to be, you think?
Look, the fact that Deadpool even got into China, I think, was something to celebrate. That's a very hard R superhero movie, right? Something that you wouldn't have seen get in years ago. So we were really excited to see that get through censorship there. I think it's going to be big. I mean, the franchise is well followed in China. It's certainly one of the most anticipated global movies of the year. I think in Hong Kong in particular, it's going to do very, very well as well.
Also, when it comes to just overall Hong Kong's box office,
sure.
I don't think we're quite back to pre-pandemic levels here right now. When do you think we'll get there, CT? So
I think, firstly, whether we will ever get back there is a function of what the industry ourselves do, right? So if you look at the U.S. box office, for example, I think it did close to $9 billion last year in terms of U.S. domestic. At its peak, I think it's $11 billion, which was in 2019. And for the last 10, 15 years, it's always been above $10 billion annual. So the U.S. is also, struggling to get back there. And it's a function of many things, right? It's a function of, streaming platforms being very popular. And Hong Kong, the Hong Kong industry is also facing similar issues, right? But at the same time, the opportunities just across the border, either in the Greater Bay Area or just China as a whole, is humongous, right? So we shouldn't look at Hong Kong itself as Hong Kong. It really is the bigger picture that we should be looking at. And it's the same language as Chinese language films.
CT, the bigger picture is also international markets too, right? How do you sort of see that as a priority and some of the challenges perhaps of marketing and promotion and highlighting these films, in non-Chinese speaking markets?
Sure. I think, in terms of marketing Chinese language films, I think historically it's always been difficult, to be really honest, because the Chinese culture is a distinct culture, right? So we try, and historically you've seen many blockbusters that emanated from China and also Hong Kong. One example is The Infernal Affairs, which was an Oscar-winning movie, but it was
one of my favorites, by the way.
Thank you very much. And it was, a remake from the Infernal Affairs trilogy that Media Asia made, many years ago. So we did it, and we hope to do it again together with, hopefully many of these younger, talented directors from China. And again, it really is not just the story, but also how you tell the story. So, we'll work hard and try to do it again.
Real quickly, overall, how do you see this movie industry growing in the next 5-10 years, maybe, or so?
So I think we're going to continue to see a lot of local language films break out. I think it's going to be a combination of Hollywood titles and local language. We're certainly doubling down on the number of IMAX Chinese films that we're doing. Last year, I believe our box office of Chinese local language made up about 61% of our total box office. We did approximately 37 IMAX films for China. Local language. I think growth is going to come from new experiences. So the NBA finals we did in Hong Kong and Taiwan, we sold out 100% of the tickets in 1 hour.
Wow.
Okay. Taylor Swift, we did earlier in the year, on January 1st. We contributed 50% of the box office. Again, 100% of the tickets sold out. Most of those audiences were people that hadn't been to a theater in probably 3 to 5 years, and they were coming for a new experience.